Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the JR Wisdom channel. I want to thank all you guys for tuning in. Starting a little late, sorry about that. I apologize in advance. But starting late this evening, and I was talking about this other day that I was going to discuss this whole documentary. Many of you guys may have seen it. It's all over social media. It's all over the news. Um, about this whole thing going on with Netflix and what the health and stuff like that. And for those of you who have been following me for some time, you may know that I talk about these things often. What's happening, JJ? I talk about these things often, particularly weight loss. Even though I'm not a diabetic, have never been a diabetic, haven't reversed any of the things, but I strongly follow the well, not follow it actively right now, but I've educated myself on the ketogenic diet, which is linked to diabetes, and it's a preventive measure that many people don't know about. It's completely different from a low carb diet, which many people think the ketogenic diet is a low carb diet, which technically it is, but it's also a high fat low carb diet. So I've watched it's with a lot of times when I watch documentaries and movies and stuff, sometimes I end up doing other things, and it'll just be playing in the background, and I'll hear what's going on, and I don't grasp it. So sometimes I have to watch it a few times. And this documentary, What the Health, is no different. I actually have it playing right now, but I'm gonna turn my screen a little bit because I'm not trying to get a copyright strike or anything like that for playing this. But I'm just gonna talk about it because a lot of the stuff I heard was conflicting with what I know, and I'm like I said, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I've read up on this stuff, and you know, the things that I'm hearing is conflicting because you have doctors on here on this documentary. For those of you who have seen it, you have doctors on here saying something completely different as far as uh, what causes diabetes. And diabetes, the diet, as far as a lot of people, particularly type 2 um, diabetes, the diet that's brought about is many people bring this illness, this disease upon themselves due to maybe ignorance. They don't know what they're supposed to be eating. Maybe they do, maybe they just don't care. Um, a lot of people link it to something that's hereditary. Obviously, in the black community, is heart disease, and diabetes is one of the biggest killers. That we talk about. But this documentary, by me watching it, like I say, a lot of you probably have watched it. A lot of things they try to that they constantly preach throughout this documentary is a plant-based diet, plant-based diet, plant-based diet. You guys need to stick to a plant-based diet is basically what they're beating into you throughout this documentary, and why it's so important for us, for your survival as a whole, um, to enjoy a plant-based diet if you want to live longer, because everything else causes cancer. They talk about the carcinogens and things like that. And that's basically what I got by watching this documentary, where there's a guy who's basically, he produces it, and he's narrating it, and he calls, American Cancer Society, and the diabetic, all of these different institutions, and he's basically uncovering that there's a conspiracy that, despite their promoting a healthy lifestyle, the diets that they're putting forth aren't matching up along with what it is that they're promoting. So it's like complete opposite and hypocritical. I'll get into that because I was kind of surprised also, which I'm still kind of skeptical about it because of the way our bodies were engineered. Whether you want to talk about evolution or the inception or when the first human was created, our bodies or our biochemistry is a certain way, and it doesn't matter who you are, it's all set up the same. where we get our fuel from, and how we actually become fat, how we gain weight, and how these diseases come about. You know, and I'm gonna go ahead and rewind this real quick to the beginning. But this documentary, I just found it weird, and I had a few people inbox me, um, not inbox me, but message me saying, this is what they came across as far as this big thing, which I've talked about in a lot of my other videos, called insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance is what they talk about on here, but they don't actually, from what I've seen, maybe you guys can correct me. I'm rewinding it to the beginning. Um, Insulin resistance, they say they briefly talk about it, but they don't go into details on what actually insulin resistance is, which is another issue I had. What was crazy to me on here is that I can understand it causing cancer. Processed meats, which is what they basically say, eating animal flesh is basically what causes all these diseases. Drinking milk is what causes all these cancers and diseases and things like that. But as far as them saying processed meat is what causes diabetes, that raised my antennas. Like, really, processed meat causes diabetes. And they went on to explain, um, the way they explained it is that the fat, basically fat, which they try to contribute most of the fat we consume is from animals, but for those of us who are, eat meats, and other things, cheeses and stuff like that, come from animals. So the fats is basically what's preventing the absorption of the sugar, as far as the fats isn't allowing, is coating the cell, blocking the cells, and isn't allowing the insulin to do its job. And they say this is insulin resistance, but you know that's technically, you can use that term, but that's not what causes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, and which ultimately leads to type 2 diabetes, is the abuse, to my understanding. Like I said, maybe you guys can correct me, but based upon my research as far as weight loss and things like that, insulin resistance starts by basically you ingesting a whole, carbohydrates over time. You just ingesting these carbohydrates. Obviously, carbohydrates break down into glucose, or people say sugars and stuff like that. And glucose obviously is stored as glycogen, and your liver produces glycogen and stuff like that. But you take a lot of people who have a high carbohydrates diet, which on this documentary, they're saying a high carbohydrates diet is perfectly fine, which really raised my antennas on that. Or I'm like, really? Are you serious? They're basically saying 400, 500, even more so. They're basically saying the more carbohydrates you take in, basically prevents diabetes, is basically what I'm hearing. And I'm like, where are they getting this stuff from? So, insulin resistance, and I've been studying this for years. Insulin resistance starts with you constantly abusing carbohydrates. Not necessarily, people always think about, well, diabetes, back at what they used to say is sugar. I have sugar. My aunt has sugar. My grandmother has sugar. Sugar, sugar, sugar. But it's basically glucose is what carbohydrates breaks down to. Whether that be you're taking in a bunch of rice, bread, pasta, all these things that are high in carbohydrates. And over time, if you got, for those of you who don't know, whenever you take carbohydrates in, the glucose enters your blood. It breaks down in the glucose, which enters your bloodstream, which causes your blood sugar level to boost, to go up. In turn, which your body, the mechanism to deal with that, it triggers the hormone insulin, which is produced from your pancreas. And by this trigger, this signal being set off, insulin comes in to save the day, to lower your blood sugar level, by basically forcing that sugar into your cells. And they got into the whole thing of fat and stuff like that. Fat being blocking it, but they didn't go into this part about insulin resistance. So over time, as you abuse sugar more and more, your pancreas is just working. Let's just say you're eating all this ice cream, you're eating sandwiches, you're eating all this crazy stuff. And one thing that they didn't talk about either, obviously, there's when you're taking in proteins as well. Proteins convert and can break down into glucose also. So when you eat something like a hamburger, which you got the bun and everything that's carbohydrates, then you have the meat, right? So you're basically getting a double whammy. These two things are boosting your insulin at the same time. Protein does through the process of gluconeogenesis, which produces glucose, and then carbohydrates breaks into that. So you're getting that. I think it was four times as much with these things. Stress boosts your insulin levels. All of these other things. So you're dealing with this. You're taking in this over time, and sweets and all of this stuff, and no exercise, and you're constantly taking this stuff into your body. It's not burning off. Your body basically says, "I'm sick of this shit." More so your pancreas. Your pancreas has just said, "I'm getting tired of this." It's like they're getting beat on. It's like an abusive husband beating on his wife. Your pancreas just says, "The hell with this. I'm done." And basically just stop producing insulin, or very little. And that's where they basically just closed the lid and said, "We're not putting out anymore." And this is where insulin resistance obviously comes in, which leads to pre-diabetic conditions, and you eventually going into being a diabetic because your body is no longer succumbing to this. And that's where obviously having a high blood sugar level leads to all these other issues, blindness, pain, y'all know the big word, the anthropic, whatever. I can't say it, but the feet pain, the sharp feet pain that's associated with diabetes, coma, all types of stuff. That's the acidity in your blood, ketoacidosis, which leads to that. You know what I'm saying? And they go into, I see you mentioning exercise, Cornelius, but yeah, they go into, they didn't really mention too much on exercise, but a lot of people on this documentary, they show many older people don't know what they're supposed to be doing because they're going to different physicians. Just like this, these physicians on here are saying something completely different from what I've heard. So imagine someone with diabetes trying to figure out what's going on, or they have diabetes and cancer and all this other stuff, and one doctor is telling them do this, one doctor is telling them do this, one doctor is telling them do this, and they really don't know what's going on. So they're taking a million pills and just messing themselves up, and they're really like torn on what the hell is it that I'm supposed to be doing, as opposed to the actual diet in itself. Everyone's trying to get a magic pill to heal themselves, as opposed to figuring out the actual diet that they should be taking. You got all this metformin and all these other medications that people are taking, instead of focusing on what the cause of it is. There's been people who have reversed, and they talk about it on here as well, I think. People who have reversed this condition of diabetes, you know what I mean, just by virtue of their diet, but some people feel that they would rather take a pill than change their diet up, knowing that at the end of the day, if you just cut out carbs, you know what I mean, carbs as a whole, because you don't need carbohydrates to survive. That's the biggest thing. You do not need carbohydrates to survive. The glucose, I believe, that is required is only 15% as far as surviving, and your body produces that or your liver produces that, is able to produce that based upon the protein that you intake, and as well as fats as well. To my understanding, can produce glucose at a certain level. So it's really not needed. It's just those amino acids that you need to survive, which are proteins, obviously, and fats are necessary for brain function as well as other things as well. Hormone regulating your hormones by taking in fats. So as I've said on my other videos as well, carbohydrates, which they say on here and you hear it all the time, has been referred to as toxic to the body at certain levels. That's why your body tends to want to use it and get rid of it as quickly as possible. You know what I mean? Yeah, the brain relies on glucose, but your body produces glucose naturally. So you don't really need to be taking in those carbohydrates. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, but these are those things. I forgot. I lost my train of thought just now. The whole sugar process. I don't know if somebody can remind me real quick. I know I was talking about some other stuff, but I'm watching this part right now. Oh yeah, about the carbs and the fat, right? Our body, because sugar is toxic in itself, is highly addictive, and it's toxic to the body. Your body, other than it being that primary source of fuel, obviously it's the go-to fuel for your body. Your body's going to use it up first, because I always say that carbohydrates is like gasoline and fat is like diesel. And you guys may have, if you watch some of my other videos on this topic, I always describe it as such. Your body will go for that quick carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, one gram of carbs is only 4 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So it's going to take less oxygen to burn carbohydrates as opposed to the fats, which is 9 calories. It's more slower. That's why when you're doing high intensity interval training or cardio and stuff, you're gonna burn those carbs first, and that's the key to weight loss. As long as you keep on here, they keep saying that carbs don't make you fat. Carbs is never gonna cause you to gain weight on here, which I find that weird. If you're taking in carbs and you don't burn it up, it's gonna turn into fat. Along with not only that, for every carb, your body holds 4 parts water. So carbs is basically where your water weight comes in, and if you're taking in all these carbs every day, you know what I'm saying? Then that's what it is. A carb is a carb. It's just basically on how complex carbs is the process of breaking it down and digesting a complex carb. To my understanding, that's the difference. But every carb is the same way as far as it's 4 calories. 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, and regardless of what kind of carb it is, it's still going to retain water. That's where your water weight comes from, is from the carbohydrates. You know what I'm saying? So it causes a lot of this stuff. Obviously, it feeds cancer as well. You know what I mean? It feeds cancer in that aspect, and they talk about that on this documentary as well. But there's really no need at all for us as human beings to take in carbs, because from an evolutionary standpoint and as far as the human anatomy, we're built to hold on to fat. We're designed to basically store fat. I'm saying that this is what this documentary is saying, that carbs or sugar basically feeds cancer. And that's what they're. If you watch this documentary, throughout this, they're basically preaching a plant-based diet. Even as far as your proteins, they were saying that your proteins, you don't need to eat animal flesh, because all protein comes from plants originally. You know what I'm saying? So you would be better off just eating plants to get your protein, which from a bodybuilding standpoint, or you getting supplements, that's a longer process, and you're going to take in a higher amount of calories by getting your protein from plants. You know what I'm saying? So, and everyone knows this who has taken protein shakes and other stuff like that, or just trying to bulk up on their protein. You're going to get the largest amount of your protein from an animal source. Tuna, bar none, I don't care what anyone says. You might find another fish, but to my knowledge, tuna by volume yields the most amount of protein, bar none. I haven't found any other food with the least amount of calories and the small amount of volume that you need to consume to get that much protein. But as they say on here, any protein, even chicken, beef, red meat, they just said, would you rather be hung or shot? That's how they compare the meats. At the end of the day, it's all bad for you. You should not be eating animal flesh at the end of the day, because that comes with, hormones and its own bacteria and stuff like that by nature of you consuming animal flesh. So it's safer just to consume a plant-based diet. For those of you who have been following Dr. Sebi, he kind of said the same thing as well, that you must eat foods that are electric and more in line with the way your body is, rather than you consuming meats, milk, all of this stuff that basically leads to heart disease, fat accumulation, and mucus. You all know, obviously, carbs in itself, and I've been through this several times by cycling on and off carbs. Carbs causes so much mucus and gas. It's ridiculous. If you ever wean off of carbs or lower your diet to a small amount of carbs, then and you decide to get back on carbs, you're going to experience a whole lot of gas and a whole lot of mucus. And I've done it so many times. Pure plant diet, no vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 doesn't come from plants, according to this documentary. Vitamin B12 does not come from plants, nor does it come from animals. It comes from, what do you call it? Like microscopic organisms, algae, or something like that blankets the earth. So the best way to get your B12, if you're not trying to be B12 deficient, is to get a supplement nowadays, which is readily available. You know what I mean? We're omnivores for a reason, but I've heard doctors say this as well. Doctors have told me this. Just because we are omnivores doesn't mean that we should be omnivores. It just means that we're capable of digesting animal flesh, but that doesn't mean we should be. I don't eat tuna the way I should be eating tuna, but if I have a specific goal, because I'm not actively training or working out for anything, I do eat lots of tuna. I hear what you're saying about mercury. Yeah, there is accumulation, and I don't know if they talked about that on here or not, but obviously, it's a whole effect. Small fish, big fish eat small fish. Small fish is exposed to mercury, so on and so forth. So the mercury accumulates by the process of, that or whatever. But I mean, I'm not saying I recommend it. I'm just telling you where you can get your highest concentration of protein. And in the comments, anybody who's watching this later, feel free to correct me. But I don't know any other source by volume with the least amount of calories than tuna fish. I haven't ran across any. You know what I mean? So no, I don't take any herbs. I take supplements, which I'm gonna do a video on the supplements I do take. I've been meaning to do that one. I'll probably get around to it this week on all the supplements I do take. Or at least I try to take, because there's quite a few of them. But we'll get to that later. But they talk on this documentary as well. They talk a lot about carcinogens and about how, obviously, there's a study came out a year or two ago about bacon, hot dogs are on the same level as smoking cigarettes and that children, the diets that we're putting our children on, they might as well be smoking 2 to 3 cigarettes a day, based upon the processed meats that they're eating, because it's falling in line with the same thing that has cancer causing effects. And they say that they should be labeling our food with the same Surgeon General warning that they have on cigarettes, but they're not doing that for whatever reason. But one of the things they touched on, and I spoke on it earlier, is that all of these corporations or these advisory boards, American Cancer Association or whatever you want to call it, Diabetes Association, I know I'm not saying it right. These people are endorsed or they are sponsored by some of the same companies who have products that cause these illnesses. Like they'll talk about I believe it was the diabetes association, whatever you want to call it, is sponsored by all of these meat, Tyson, Dannon for dairy products, and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. The same thing for the cancer. A lot of the products that are said to cause cancer, they're actually sponsoring the American Cancer Society or whatever you want to call it. And when this guy who's doing the documentary attempted to contact these people, they wouldn't talk to him. Even one of the doctors for the Diabetes Association, whatever, he didn't even want to talk about a diet that can prevent, people from getting diabetes. He said he just wouldn't talk about that. So it's kind of like the FDA with medications and stuff. It's not like people are looking for the cure. They're looking just to keep people sick so they can keep the money coming in. And whether it be by ignorance or just omission, some people are just going to be in that state and live that way, and their lives are going to be cut short. They were saying on here something about by having children eat, I think it was what they said, by having children eat processed foods or something like that, that you're shorting, or sugars or something like that. You're shorting a child's life by 19 years. Because it's raising the chances of them getting diabetes or whatever. I see it a lot on social media. I see a lot of people saying they're going to the hospital, because of the effects or, the ramifications of diabetes. But they're not eating right. They're just eating. They think their body is just here just to consume whatever it is that they want to consume, and everything will be all right. If you guys are in the chat, if you don't mind, I've been on here for quite some time. Go ahead and hit the like button. It's free. Doesn't cost you a penny. You know what I mean? It helps promote the video. So if you guys don't mind. Many doctors will only give you approved medical advice. That is exactly right. Not, as they say on this documentary, that many of the doctors won't try to give you any nutritional advice because they really don't know or aren't trained or don't go through school to actually give you that kind of nutritional advice as far as these things go. You know what I mean? So they're just going to give you standard medical advice and sometimes just stuff that'll keep you sick. You know what I mean? And they go on to say, obviously, a lot of these restaurants who put out this information, these fast food restaurants, they have to pass USDA inspection in order to produce this food. So they are USDA endorsed, or this is government putting out this food to you guys to consume. And they go into the whole, the cheeseburger laws on here about if you decide to consume a cheeseburger, it's your fault, because you should be smart enough to know that a cheeseburger isn't healthy for you. As the consumer, you should be smart enough. You shouldn't be that dumb, to consume that. So it's on you. So you have a lot of these laws that have been put in place to protect these companies, and people. just it's the numbers they were quoting, the statistics, it's going up drastically every year. These people who are getting, diabetes and heart disease and stuff like that based upon their food choices, and the fact that a lot of these food choices are very inexpensive and they taste good, they're very addictive, and people just consume them obviously on the regular. And before you know it, you're in the hospital, you know, staring death in the eye. Excuse me. But they go in to talk about a lot of these animal products we consume are especially milk are high in hormones, particularly estrogen, and another one that's basically in female birth control pills. I forgot, it starts with a P. Progest something. Y'all forgive me if I don't know it. A lot of you who may be taking birth control, y'all know what I'm talking about. But this is in a lot of these dairy products we're consuming, because obviously dairy products are rich in hormones. So some people will say that this is the reason why a lot of the children are affected. That's it, progesterone, are affected, and their sexuality isn't affected because they have too much estrogen running in their bodies, based upon the fact of consuming cow's milk, which there is really no need for human beings to be consuming cow's milk. And they also go into the fact that every race of color is basically lactose intolerant, or at least a high percentage of them. Within the 60 to 70 percentile of that race is lactose intolerant, with the exception of white Caucasian people. But at the same time, a lot of these companies, and USDA and whatever else are promoting to these people, these different races, to consume these products, even though they're it's not going to benefit them, it's going to make them sick. But they're basically telling them that they need to consume these things, even though their body isn't designed to be taking in these cow's milk and these things that they're consuming. And there's no child on earth, as he was saying in the documentary, that actually needs to drink a cow's milk. It's a human baby. Why is a human baby drinking a cow's milk instead of the natural breast milk that the mother provides for the children? 73%, 95% of Asians, 70% of Native Americans, and 53% of Hispanic Americans are lactose intolerant. But the government is constantly encouraging, these people to eat these things. You know what I mean? Which he basically saying is benefiting the farmers at the end of the day, which we understand that, and one of the guys is saying it's a form of institutionalized racism by giving this information and this guidance, these suggestions of what to consume. But dairy products, produces eczema, acne, constipation, all of these other things. We consume so much of this stuff, but one thing as human beings we don't get a lot of is fiber. There's never a protein deficiency, but there's usually always a protein or a fiber deficiency as far as our consumption of food. You know what I mean? So on this documentary also, they go to the different farms, as far as pig farms and stuff like that, and the swine flu, and basically saying how when these animals are slaughtered, they just sit in a box, and they just rot away, and they have boils and all types of pus. Which, another thing they talk about, it, most of the milk we drink is basically pus that we're consuming. A lot of times full of antibiotics with the pus, but they spray these fields with these chemicals which we're ingesting. All of this stuff we're just constantly taking in our bodies, and for the people who eat, excuse me, for the people who are eating pork, you know, obviously the pig is a filthy animal with the feces on top of each other, which they discuss on this documentary. The feces that come out from the pig sliding through, the cracks and actually being processed with the food. And that's another thing they were saying. A lot of the meat, the percentage of feces or fecal matter that is in the meat, it's in all the meat that we eat. The processed meat has fecal matter in it, is what they're covering on here. So it's it's very interesting, and they go into like the fact that milk basically doesn't do anything for your body. It doesn't make your bones strong. It even kids, adults, whoever have more fractures. Osteoporosis is higher in those who actually consume milk or milk products. So a lot of the stuff is like, wow, I didn't know. I'm watching stuff and I'm really like, I could see the cancer and stuff, but as far as from a biochemical standpoint, when we're talking about carbohydrates, proteins, your basic macros, which I've said in the past, which are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. You know what I'm saying? These are your where you basically get your nutrients from. You know what I mean? And we, as far as the Western world, and I'm just saying America overall, have an obesity problem and we just take in all of this stuff, which basically you're digging your grave with a fork and spoon, in this process. So, it's a it's a interesting, eye-open documentary. I just find, you know, this part, which it's like I said, it's partially correct. I just felt that they should have went into more detail as far as this diabetes part and what actually is the issue of insulin. I was about to say insulin sensitivity, which I didn't cover earlier, as opposed to insulin resistance, which I was talking about. Insulin sensitivity is the exact opposite in people who tend to be in shape or thin or whatever are insulin sensitive. Not to say that skinny people can't be diabetics, but you know that's something else. But I think you guys should check it out. Some people will say it's propaganda. Like a lot of documentaries are. On certain things, but I encourage you guys to check it out. It's pretty interesting. I have my own thoughts on it, as I told you guys, particularly on the diabetes stuff, which I'm not gonna keep talking about that over and over. But check it out. Let me know you guys' thoughts on it. You know, Another thing before I get off here, I meant to mention is that even as far as insulin is even the process, or that raises your blood sugar, even the process of you digesting food, digestive enzymes and things of that nature raises your blood sugar and produces insulin. So it's just something else to think about. But I'm gonna go ahead. I think I talked long enough. I'm gonna go ahead and get up off of here. You know what I mean? I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you got Netflix, make sure you guys check it out. I'm pretty sure you can find it somewhere else online if you don't. It's a cool documentary as far as these corporations and how it all seems you see in the face of capitalism over and over continuously, and takes priority over human health and human life. You know what I mean? So, no, I'm not familiar. I've never heard of that. Macaw root powder. You know, I haven't heard of that. I have to look that up. But let me know your thoughts. Like I said, like, share, comment, and subscribe. All my links are in the description. My Amazon, my social media, my Teespring. Peace be upon you all. Make sure you guys get your T-shirts if you haven't gotten some yet. I've already got the. I keep adding new stuff in there, so hopefully you find something you like. You know what I mean? So yeah, if you got any questions, any topics you'd like me to discuss, feel free to email me those as well. I hope like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Remember, anything lost can be found again except for time wasted. I will see you guys on the next live stream and or chat. And you guys have a great night. And I will see you guys soon. Peace be upon you all in the mercy and blessings of the Almighty. And I'm out. Peace.